Hey YouTube, I wanted to just outline a brief argument for anti-natalism. I don't think anyone has ever given this argument before, because it's not a very good argument. But the trouble is, I've got nothing. I've got no ideas. My mind is completely empty. So you're going to get a bad argument, and yeah, that's it. So anyway, the argument, to set this up, we can ask the question, what would an ideal life look like? Okay, what's an ideal life? More precisely, what would the ideal lifespan be? I mean, I suppose if we're thinking about the question, what does an ideal life look like? Well, the first thing we want to know is, how long is it, right? Right? What's the time span that we're working with? Now, many philosophers will argue that immortality is undesirable. It would not be a good thing to live forever. I myself don't get on board with this. I'm not convinced by that argument. But it's an argument that's made, and I think a lot of people feel the pull of that conclusion. Many non-philosophers, when I've spoken to them about this, also have a kind of sense of dread about the idea of just existing forever, even if you stipulate that the life in question is good, right? There's just a continuous stream of good experiences. So we're not dealing with a situation where like the body just breaks down and there's endless suffering, right? It's no, there's pleasure and happiness, but still the idea of it just going on and on and on forever without end leaves a lot of people feeling uncomfortable. So let's assume then that an eternal life would not be ideal. Okay, so in that case it looks like, oh well, we must be dealing with a finite lifespan, right? So what exactly would the ideal finite lifespan be? And I think there's something a bit odd about this, right? Because it looks like whatever we say the ideal finite lifespan is, the line that we draw there looks very arbitrary. It looks like it looks like we're drawing the line at a very arbitrary point. Indeed, it's not. I mean, when we think about it like this in the abstract, it's not clear how we should even proceed, right? So if we talk about a human being, then we can think about the ideal lifespan of a human being in terms of human biological limitations. So, I can say something like, well, maybe the ideal lifespan for a human is something like 80 years. But then what drives that judgment is my understanding of how long the human body is in a good condition for. So I know, like, once you get beyond 80 years, okay, there's going to be, like disabilities, there's going to be a lot of pain, right? Things start breaking down. But again, think about this more just abstractly, right? Like, if you could construct your ideal life without worrying about human biological limitations, what would that look like? Why on earth would you choose 80 years, right? Why not 800, 8,000, 80,000, 80 million, right? So, first point is, whatever number you give there, like why that number rather than some higher or lower number? And moreover, notice that whatever number you select, if you think about like much larger and larger and larger numbers, any number that you select is going to sort of recede to an infinitesimal point. So again, for a human being, you might say, okay, for a human being, the ideal lifespan is 80 years. But then when you compare that to a lifespan of like 800 billion years, 80 years is just, it's nothing, right? It just isn't, I mean, but the point is, it really isn't clear, like, how we even, what should the order of magnitude even be? There just doesn't seem to be any basis at all on which to choose, like, okay, why not, why 8 days, 80 years, 80 billion, or something far longer? There's just nothing. It seems totally arbitrary. Moreover, I think it feels kind of odd from the first person point of view. If we're imagining an ideal life, it feels very odd to say at any given moment that, okay, you've now reached the ideal limit, right? You've now reached the end of the ideal lifespan. If you continue any further, then uh, then your life is sort of worse than it could ideally be. So again, we're imagining a situation where somebody is in perfectly good physical health, where they're still enjoying themselves, where they can, I don't know, they've still got their mental capacities, all of this stuff. From that point of view, I mean, if I have, I don't know, various projects that I'm engaging in, if I'm enjoying myself, then it does seem very odd to say, okay, well, like, this is it. You've reached that. This is the end of where your life could ideally be. Which means there's something, I think, odd about the idea that ideally, right, an ideal life would be any finite length. So what does that leave us with? Well, that leaves us with zero, right? The life never gets started in the first place. So we're trying to construct what the ideal would be, and again, assume that immortality is undesirable, assume then that there's something objectionably arbitrary about any finite amount of life, then it looks like what the ideal would be is just to never come into existence at all. Now, so we have, so the point is like three options, right? There's immortality, there's finite lifespan, and there's just never coming into existence. And what this argument is leading to is the idea that just never coming into existence is actually the ideal, right? Like the best that you could get is just never coming into existence at all. And that's from the assumption that, okay, immortality is undesirable, but if we're saying that there's any ideal finite lifespan, then that would be objectionably arbitrary. So the ideal is going to end up being never coming into existence at all. And then that is not in itself an argument for anti-natalism, but I suppose it could be used to support the anti-natalist conclusion. What this concludes ultimately is that ideally the best option is never coming into existence at all. I say that that's not in itself an argument for anti-natalism because there's no claim here that what you would need in order to get to an anti-natalist conclusion from that is the idea that you ought to do, or like if I'm thinking of having a child, for instance, then I ought to do whatever would promote the ideal circumstances, and that would require some further argument. But at the very least, this would be supporting the idea that it's just better never to come into existence, or it's best, like that's the best option, is never coming into existence. Now, as I say, I don't think that's really a very good argument. There's probably about 100 serious and obvious problems with it. I just have no ideas left. So you're getting the sort of detritus, I suppose, at the end of what we've gone beyond the ideal lifespan for a philosophy channel. I guess that's what we've learned here. Okay, bye.